Hello and welcome to yet another commentary from King's Comments. And today we're going to be discussing the 360-degree view of what's been happening since my last audio message in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And we're also going to be talking about some of the geopolitical narratives that are developing as a function of what we're seeing on the battlefield. Now, if everyone remembers in my last audio message, which has been some time ago, we had discussed the measured advance of the Russian army in the Donbass area, and that measured advance has now turned into something completely different. The Ukrainian army is collapsing, and they're collapsing in a way that has never been seen before. The Russians have taken huge amounts of territory. Settlements are falling quickly. And they've taken places like New York, which is the Ukrainian name for a city in the Donbass area. They've completely taken that city. And now they're threatening a major supply hub called Pokrovsk, which is a major supply hub for the Ukrainians. And they're right at the outskirts of the city, if not already in the city. In the Touretsk area, it's just getting from bad to worse. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, because of the fact that the Ukrainian defense lines are crumbling. In many cases, from some of the content or videos we're seeing from the Telegram channels, Ukrainian forces are basically fleeing the area. They're not even stopping to fight. No defense fortifications have been built. And it's turning into a major collapse on the Donbass front, which is primarily where the majority of the fighting is taking place, because in the Luhansk area, much of the fighting there is going to be coming to its end as the Russians take the entire Luhansk region, which is one of the four provinces that they had already said that they were going to take. Now, something has transpired, and I think everybody is acutely aware of it. And what the Ukrainians had attempted to do was they had realized that there was a significant amount of pressure being placed on their formations in the Donbass region and also in the northern part of the buffer zone around close to Kharkov. And so they realized that they needed to do something maybe a little bit drastic to create a different dynamic. And so what they did was they hurriedly decided to mount an offensive where it was a bit of an armored offensive. Large troop formations, maybe about 12,000 men altogether, were sent to an area called Kursk, the Kursk region. Now, this is a well-known region because obviously it has World War II inferences, and the Russians were completely caught off guard by all of this. And the goal of this particular mission, as it would seem, was to create not only a buffer zone, but to create a situation where they could take the power plant, which was some ways away from their initial thrust when they came into Kursk unannounced. Some time has passed since the Kursk offensive, and it has completely failed. In fact, what it's done is it's decimated the formations, the Ukrainian formations that were there. The Russians have eliminated, for the most part, all of the armor, if not 95% of their armor in the Kursk region, and upwards of 7,500 soldiers have been eliminated or neutralized in this offensive. Now, the Russians have not mounted anything serious from a ground campaign, but from what we've been told and what we're seeing, that's about to start. And what that's basically going to do is eliminate or push back the Ukrainians back to their boundary. And there's some thought that maybe this may be the beginning of the end for the entire country of Ukraine, Because one of the geopolitical narratives that is coming out of all this is that the Russian government has basically stated that there will be no talks, and there will be no interest in creating a opportunity for a tit-for-tat ceasefire or a tit-for-tat way of trying to trade land, trade territory based off of this Kursk offensive. Now, the offensive is no longer an offensive. It's been completely ground down. The nuclear power plant in that area was never captured, never close to captured. And to be quite frank, had the Ukrainians captured it, it would have been a major coup in their hat, or for them to be able to say, look, we've got this power plant, and it could have created a real problem in terms of the Russians mounting an assault to recapture that plant. Now that plant is secure, safe in Russian hands, and always has been, and with the bombardment, the heavy bombardment of Ukrainian, armored divisions, it is now a situation where the existing formations that are there are likely to find themselves encircled, which is nothing new, because that seems to be a famous Russian tactic in terms of military doctrine when it comes to eliminating divisions or eliminating brigades. But this has been a massive loss of men, and it comes at a time when the Ukrainian military could least afford to lose trained men taken from other areas of the front, which were failing and they were losing at. And now they're dying in an area that, quite frankly, has lost its objective in terms of its military strategic opportunity. So right now, I think what we're seeing is the hastening collapse of Ukraine's ability to fight or mount effective counterattacks in a way that will be sustained. From here on in, I believe the war is moving into a new stage. And that new stage is where the Russians now are going to make decisions. And the decisions they make will effectively create the new dynamic for the geopolitical narratives moving forward. I think it's a fait accompli. I don't think anyone doubts this, that the four regions, including Crimea, are effectively under Russian control. That will not change ever under this scenario, under the under the conditions that exist right now. I think at this point, what really is in doubt is whether the Kiev government continues to exist. And my opinion, and I'm just throwing this out there, is that I don't believe that after the Kursk invasion that the Kiev government will exist. I believe that the Russian military is making plans already for taking over the entire country. And this is in part due to what I mentioned earlier, that the fact that they were moving into Russian territory with the sole purpose of taking over a nuclear power plant is something that, as far as Russia is concerned, will always be a problem with this particular government. So as far as they're concerned, I believe they're going to eliminate Ukraine as a threat from here on in, and any talk of negotiation is completely closed. So that window has completely closed on this existing government. Now, the other thing that this failed Kursk offensive failed at, and I'm using that fail word twice here, is that it failed to move the dial on the Eastern Front, particularly in the Donbass area, because the hope is that the Russians would take divisions or brigades from that area and move them over to deal with Kursk. That's not happening. What we're seeing, particularly in the Pokrovsk area, is that the Russian brigades that are there are not being rotated out They are continuing with their offensive operations, and they're continuing to put the pressure on the Ukrainian armed forces. The level of intensity of FAB bombs, the artillery strikes, and the level of energy infrastructure damage that's being inflicted on Ukraine in general is scaling up. So this is one of the things that we're seeing in this war right now, is that what we're seeing the Russian military no longer making measured advances. These advances are significant. And Donbass, I can pretty much tell everybody, is effectively lost. Now, how important is Pokrovsk? Well, Pokrovsk is a major supply route. It is Ukraine's ability to feed, finance their military, and it's basically a hub because a lot of the roads that go into the other areas or highways are all going through Pokrovsk. Now, the fact that Pokrovsk is under siege at present, and the fact that the population there is forced to leave without any defensive fortifications that have been built, indicates that the Ukrainian military is completely at its wit's end. Now, General Syrskyi, the head of the Ukrainian armed forces, in my opinion, has done everything he can possibly do from a military perspective. I believe his head is on the chopping block, but it's not going to make much difference because the Russian military is going to, in my opinion, take out the leadership in Kiev, or they'll be forced to leave or live in exile. That's just my opinion on the matter. I don't see how this regime survives, particularly after Kursk. I mean, Kursk is a major battlefield loss for the Ukrainian military, but it's also, at the same time, a major black eye for the Russians. And the reason why it is a black eye for the Russians is because it's an incursion in their own territory, and they were not aware of it. So at the end of the day, the fact that they've eliminated the threat doesn't mean that this incursion is not going to come without its own investigation and with its own resolve to eliminate Ukraine as a threat moving forward. So I want to let everybody know that I'm going to be putting out new audio messages soon. I believe that there's going to be some significant changes that warrant those audio messages. One thing about these messages is that I don't like to talk about the same thing that's happening all the time in the terms of consistency and a pattern. And over the course of this war, we have seen a measured, as I said, response to Ukraine from the Russian military. And now it's no longer measured. The gloves are off. And basically what you're seeing major movement on the part of the Russian military. And the casualties that are being taken, particularly on the Ukrainian side, cannot be discounted. We're talking upwards of 2,500 men a day being lost on the Ukrainian side. The Russian military is taking losses. That is absolutely a given. But they can afford those losses because of the fact that they've got a huge a pool of volunteers that are prepared to come in at any moment and fill the ranks. The Ukrainian army right now is not in that position. All of their capable soldiers are dead or wounded, and those that are filling the ranks right now are individuals that really don't want to be there, or people that have been rounded up against their will. And we're seeing that play out because the amount of these men fleeing the battlefield, where the Russians are just walking in the Donbass area, is obvious. And General Syrskyi made mention of the fact that the quality of the soldiers that are being brought to the front line are not good. So this is something that cannot be sustained. It's untenable. this move in the Kursk area was, in my opinion, a last gasp. And it sort of reminds me, because I'm a World War II buff, of what took place during the Russian offensive when General Erich von Manstein retook the city of Kharkiv. And he did it in a way that no one expected. The Russian military was completely caught off guard. But Kharkiv eventually fell back to the Russians, and the Germans were eventually obliterated. So that particular offensive, while it was completely brilliant in its tactical ability, it actually did meet its objectives. The Kursk offensive by the Ukrainians did not meet its objective in terms of taking the power plant. And so from that standpoint, from a military standpoint, it's basically, for all intents and purposes, useless. Now, the fact that 7,500 men have been lost so far is also a point of contention, because these are crack soldiers that probably could have been put to better use. And you had to know beforehand that you were going to be able to take this particular site. It's not been taken. So what's left of the Kursk offensive? Well, what's left is that the Russians have had a black eye because of the fact that they did not see this coming, and they're going to take revenge. Kursk is just the beginning of that revenge. So all of those men that are there, all of that material will be eliminated and destroyed, and the Russians are more than likely to eliminate the leadership that actually created this offensive, and they're more likely to now go on the warpath even more to make sure that Ukraine is never a threat again. So I just wanted to thank everyone for liking and subscribing to my channel. It's a relatively fledgling channel. I would also want to mention, everyone, that for more in-depth analysis on the war itself, I think it's a great idea to go to Military Summary channel, where Dima gives a very, very good synopsis of the day-to-day activities based off of what he's getting on Telegram channels. And at the same time, there's Alexander Mercouris, who provides within about an hour or so a detailed explanation of not only the war itself, but some of the geopolitical narratives that are taking place. And it's not from a 360-degree view. I mean, he's looking at it from all different angles, and it's a very, very in-depth way of looking at what's happening right now. So once again, I want to thank everyone for liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel, and you guys will be seeing more of my audio messages as this war progresses. Thanks very much.